Hello all. Today's deep dive into the meaning of nursery rhymes takes us around the Mulberry Bush. We'll explore if its origins are a Victorian women's prison, or if it's about a failed attempt at creating a silk industry in 17th century England. We'll visit two ancient mulberry trees, which you can dance around today, and we'll look at why a mulberry bush is in the rhyme when mulberries grow on trees. As ever, we'll start by looking at the rhyme as we know it today. The song accompanies a dance and a game in which children form a circle. The mulberry tree at the centre is optional. Sometimes a child acts as a tree. Then, holding hands, they recite the first verse. Here we go round the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush. Here we go round the mulberry bush on a cold and frosty morning. There then follows an infinite number of verses in which we are told that this is the way we do something. Wash our face, comb our hair, brush our teeth, put on our clothes, which seems to come quite late in the rhyme given it's a cold and frosty morning, and this continues for any number of domestic chores. But they all end up with a repeat of the original refrain. Here we go round the mulberry bush on a cold and frosty morning. So what's the history of the rhyme? Well, the first evidence of a dancing ring game, which specifically includes mulberry bushes, dates from an 1842 book, Popular Rhymes, Fireside Stories and Amusements of Scotland. This was a second edition of a book by Robert Chambers, but I suspect the concept of children dancing around a tree and mimicking their parents' chores dates back to antiquity. The most important difference between this early version and the one we know today is in the final line, and around the merry Matanzee. The Matanzee turns up quite a few times in Scottish rhymes and jigs, and if you'll indulge me for a moment, we'll go down a rabbit hole and find out what is a Matanzee and what makes it so merry. There's actually a lot of conjecture about a Matanzee. It may be that it's just a mutation of merry maids, or it could refer to the Virgin Mary, which is why perhaps the children curtsy at the end rather than fall over, as is the case with other ring games such as Ring-a-Ring-a-Roses. This early version is sung to the tune of Nancy Dawson. I've added a link to the tune in the notes below. The rhyme is also found in James Orchard Halliwell's Popular Rhymes and Nursery Games in 1849. This publication was a follow-up to his Nursery Rhymes of England, which I've done a video about and I've added a link. This is almost the version we know today. However, in Halliwell's version, the children appear to be expected to dance around a bramble bush on a cold and frosty morning, and actually dance around a mulberry bush on a sunny morning. There's speculation as to why the mulberry bush took the place of the bramble bush. It may be that it's simply just easier for alliteration, but to be honest, I can envisage parents telling children to find a different plant to dance around other than brambles. This may indeed explain why the children dance around a mulberry bush rather than a mulberry tree, children perhaps not being totally au fait with the horticulture of the English countryside. In fact, it seems pure chance that we're left singing about mulberry bushes. In the past, a variety of plants were used. According to Children's Singing Games, published in 1895, the barberry bush was popular in Massachusetts. There's also examples of songs involving holly bushes and ivy bushes. The English author Thomas Hardy remembers dancing around a gooseberry bush. Meanwhile, T.S. Eliot recalled the same rhyme, but with a prickly pear at the centre. I love the thought of the great authors as children dancing in a circle with their friends. By the end of the 20th century, the mulberry bush seems to have won through, and Alice in Wonderland found herself taking part in the rhyme when she was trying to shake hands with Tweedledum and Tweedledee. So what's the origin of the rhyme? Well, if we discount the idea that it's just a fun ring game for children mimicking their parents going about their daily tasks, which, let's be honest, it probably is, but let's play along anyway, we have two main theories, one about a prison and one about a failed business enterprise by a king. The first theory, and one which has enthusiastically been taken up by lots of websites and His Majesty's Prison Service in the UK, is that it was created by female prisoners at His Majesty's Prison Wakefield in Yorkshire. Wakefield is also the possible place of origin of the Grand Old Duke of York, which I've done a video about, and I've added a link above. Wakefield was founded in 1595, and while today it's a high-security male prison, through the 19th century it housed male and female inmates. Within the grounds, there was a mulberry bush, or tree, which, according to a former governor, had been there for hundreds of years, and apparently was taken as a cutting from a much older bush, which still exists in a stately home nearby. I can find 3 stories in the meaning of nursery rhymes which link it with Wakefield. Either the prisoners recited the rhyme as they exercised in the moonlight, which seems unlikely to put it mildly. When did prisoners ever exercise at night, let alone around a tree, singing about washing their clothes? Surely under such circumstances, it'd be more likely to say, "This is the way we climb the walls." The second theory is that female prisoners who were sentenced to death would recite the rhyme as they walked around the tree one last time. But why they would do this isn't explained, and given the phrase, "this is the way we do something or other," is basically infinite in the rhyme, I would have thought you could avoid the gallows by just adding a new verse. And why would the last thing you sing about be washing your face? I'm not convinced. For me, the third theory seems the most likely, and that's simply that female prisoners invented the rhyme as a way of amusing their children when they came to visit. So what do we make of all this? It seems possible that prisoners could have adapted the various rhymes referring to dancing around trees to that of the mulberry tree, which was in the grounds. Certainly this theory has been taken up with vigour by the prison itself. The mulberry bush is included in the coat of arms of the prison, as we can see it here on the top left-hand side. The staff dining hall in the prison is the mulberry, and an adjacent road to the prison is called Mulberry Way. The tree was shortlisted for the UK Tree of the Year in 2016. Sadly, the mulberry tree died a year later from a beetle infestation. The tree was cut down and removed. However, the power of nursery rhymes are so strong, it was discovered a prison officer had taken a cutting in the 1980s, and these cuttings had now grown into mature trees. One cutting was planted in the original spot, and a second on the edge of the prison so that people could dance around it. A third plant is found in the sculptural garden in Wakefield itself. So if you're ever in the area, you too can dance around the original mulberry tree. But maybe there's a second theory for the origin of the rhyme. Perhaps the rhyme is a self-deprecating verse about Britain's struggles to cultivate silk. Let me explain. The leaves of mulberry trees are the perfect food for silkworms, the larvae of silk moths. The cocoons they produce are harvested to create raw silk. In the 16th and 17th century, during the reigns of Elizabeth I and James I, England tried to emulate the success of other nations to create a domestic silk industry, so avoiding expensive imports. James planted thousands of mulberry trees in the royal parks of London and distributed tens of thousands of others to stately homes. There was, however, a teensy-weensy bit of a problem. The preferred natural food of silkworms is the leaves of the white mulberry. What James bought were black mulberries, perfect for jam and other desserts, but produced silk which was of a poor quality, of uneven thickness, which was liable to break when wound, making it uneconomic for making the fine thread that fashion demanded in the 17th century. There was a second problem, the English weather, the damp summers, and the cold and frosty mornings. This was not ideal conditions for the caterpillar of the silk moth, which was more accustomed to the warmer climates of China and India. So apparently this is how the rhyme developed. But again, why discuss domestic chores within the rhyme rather than difficulties of silk production? If you would like to dance around one of the original mulberry trees planted by James I, the most famous can be found in Charlton House in Greenwich in London. It's just over 400 years old. And it's not only one of the oldest mulberry trees in London, it's one of the oldest trees in the city of any species. Queen Elizabeth II designated as an important tree within the British Isles in 2002. Another evocative example of an ancient mulberry tree is in Bethnal Green in East London. It's found in the grounds of the old London Chest Hospital. It was apparently planted by Edmund Bonner, the Archbishop of London. He became notorious as Bloody Bonner during the reign of Mary I because of his persecution of Protestants. The tree was damaged in a German bombing raid during the Second World War, but it survived and is now thriving. And here's a wonderful picture of nurses dancing round the tree in 1944 as it recovered, singing the rhyme. In more recent times, the tree was threatened by redevelopment, but in part thanks to the nursery rhyme, it was saved by a local campaign. So that's the history of Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do leave a like and consider subscribing so I can notify you of all future videos. Bye for now.